Billionaire walks into diner, sees his old crush as a waitress. What he does next will leave you speechless. The rain fell in sheets relentless and cold, drenching the streets of Ashton Hollow, a sleepy little town tucked into the edges of Washington state. It was the kind of night that swallowed sound and color, leaving everything drenched in steel gray and silence. Most people were huddled indoors, but not Jackson Carter. From the tinted window of his black SUV, Jackson gazed at the blurred outlines of neon signs and rusting storefronts. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not tonight. Not ever again, really. A high-profile fundraising gala awaited him 2 hours away in downtown Seattle. One of those black-tie affairs where billionaires paraded around pretending to care. But Jackson had canceled at the last minute. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the hollowness of it all. Or maybe, just maybe, it was something deeper. A quiet ache he hadn't known he'd been carrying until tonight. As the rain intensified, he asked his driver to pull over at a rundown diner that looked like it hadn't seen a remodel since the 1970s. The windows were fogged over the neon sign, buzzed and flickered, and the name, June's Grill, was barely legible. But it was warm, and it smelled like bacon grease and fresh coffee. That was good enough. He stepped inside, a small bell tinkling above the door, shaking the cold from his coat. Nobody paid him any mind. A couple of truckers hunched over their burgers. A college kid dozed over a laptop. And then he saw her. At first, it didn't register. She was behind the counter, focused, tired. Her ponytail was messy. Her hands moved fast. But when she turned and called out, "I'll be right with you," his world stopped. That voice, that face, those emerald green eyes. It was her, Emily Walker, the girl he once competed with for every honor, every scholarship, every title back at Ridgeview High. The girl who could out-debate a teacher, sketch human emotion with the flick of a pencil, and finish a calculus problem while humming a Chopin sonata. She was a force back then. Electric, brilliant, unstoppable. And now she was wiping ketchup from a vinyl booth and asking a trucker if he wanted a refill. Jackson sat down slowly in the farthest corner, heart pounding. She hadn't recognized him? Not yet. And why would she? Gone was the lanky kid with taped glasses and secondhand sweaters. Jackson Carter was now the CEO of Carter Neural Systems, one of the most powerful tech firms on the West Coast. He wore tailored suits and made decisions that moved markets. But in this diner on this rainy night, he was just a man watching a ghost of his past, serve coffee in a place that had forgotten what dreams looked like. He stayed quiet, ordered a black coffee when she approached, kept his head low. She didn't flinch, didn't pause, just scribbled it down and moved on. But inside, Jackson's world was unraveling. How had it come to this? What had happened to the girl who once said she'd change the world with her art? As the rain drummed louder against the windows and the coffee cooled untouched in front of him, one thing became clear. He wasn't leaving this diner until he found out what happened to Emily Walker. Jackson Carter sat in that booth longer than he intended. An hour, maybe 2. Time seemed to blur under the weight of memory and disbelief. He watched her move between tables, refilling mugs, cracking a tired smile here and there. Every gesture, every word from her mouth felt like watching a color fade from a masterpiece he used to admire. And yet, she was still Emily. The last time he'd seen her was on graduation night, Ridgeview High class of 2008. She'd worn a deep blue sash that marked her as valedictorian. He'd been salutatorian, second place by a razor-thin margin. They were rivals, but never enemies. There had always been something unspoken, a current of respect, maybe even something more, if either of them had been brave enough to acknowledge it. She was going to the California Institute of the Arts, full scholarship. He remembered her showing off her portfolio once, charcoal drawings that felt alive, pieces that made even math nerds like him feel something. Her dream was to become a visual storyteller, to weave emotion and narrative through art. She used to say, "What's the point of data without humanity?" He thought it was pretentious back then. Now, he wasn't so sure. From across the room, he studied her face. The eyes were the same, brilliant and sharp, but everything else had shifted. Her cheeks were thinner. Worry lines crept at the corners of her mouth. And those hands that once shaped beauty from blank pages, were now calloused and raw from carrying plates and scrubbing floors. Jackson remembered his own meteoric rise after high school. Scholarships, tech startups, Silicon Valley incubators. By 28, he was featured on the cover of Wired. By 30, he'd made his first billion. But what did it matter if the person who once made him feel alive now looked like she was barely surviving? When Emily disappeared into the back room for a moment, Jackson pulled out his phone and opened a secure contact. A name popped up: Quinn Mercer, private intel. Quinn wasn't just an investigator. She was discreet, surgical, and damn near clairvoyant when it came to piecing together a life story. He typed fast. Need a full background file. Subject: Emily Walker. Ridgeview High Class of 2008. Last seen working at June's Grill in Ashton Hollow. Priority high. He hesitated, then added, "This isn't a corporate op. Be gentle." As he hit send, he realized something that made his throat tighten. He'd built algorithms that could predict human behavior with 97% accuracy. He'd engineered neural interfaces to map the mind. But none of that could explain how the brightest girl he'd ever known ended up in a place like this. When Emily returned to his table to top off the coffee, their eyes met. Just for a second. And maybe, just maybe, she hesitated. A flicker of recognition. A flash of something familiar. Coffee still hot. She asked, her voice quiet but steady. Jackson nodded. "Yeah, it's perfect." She smiled politely and walked away. But that smile, it didn't reach her eyes. And Jackson realized that smile haunted him more than anything else in the diner. He had the money. He had the power. But for the first time in a very long time, he felt powerless. Because behind that smile, he saw something broken. And he knew he couldn't just walk away. Not this time. The following morning, Jackson sat alone in the glass-walled corner office of his downtown Seattle headquarters. Below, the city pulsed with movement. Endless cars, endless ambition. But Jackson's mind wasn't in the boardroom. It was still back at June's Grill. He hadn't slept. The sunlight filtering through his office window only deepened the shadows under his eyes. He didn't care. He just needed answers. At precisely 8:15 a.m., his encrypted inbox pinged. Quinn Mercer never missed a deadline. He opened the file. What he read stunned him. Emily Walker had in fact enrolled at CalArts in 2008 on a full scholarship. Her professors called her once in a decade. She aced every course. Her sophomore portfolio was submitted to major animation studios for early internship consideration. Then in the spring of 2009, everything changed. Her father, David Walker, a postal worker with a perfect attendance record, was diagnosed with a rare degenerative nerve disease. Rapid onset, rapid decline. The medical bills were brutal, and their insurance barely made a dent. Emily's younger brother Ben was only 13. By the summer of that year, Emily had formally withdrawn from school. Quinn included the withdrawal letter in the report. Jackson read it 3 times. Due to urgent family medical needs, I regretfully must suspend my education. I hope to return in the future. Thank you for believing in me. Emily Walker. She didn't return. Instead, she moved back home to Ashton Hollow, took 2 jobs, first as a pharmacy cashier, then as a night shift receptionist at a motel. Her art all but vanished. No exhibitions, no portfolios, no social media. She became invisible. She raised her brother. She paid the rent. She kept her father alive through sheer force of will. For over a decade, Jackson leaned back in his chair, eyes burning. He'd read hundreds of background reports in his career, data breaches, insider threats, political smears. But this wasn't a fall from grace. It was a quiet act of heroism. She had sacrificed everything, dreams, art, identity, for people she loved, and not once had she asked for help. He scrolled down. The report ended with a simple line. As of 2 months ago, Emily Walker works mornings at Ashton Cleaners and evenings at June's Grill. Estimated weekly hours, 78. Jackson closed the file and stared at the skyline. He'd spent years building empires, buying companies, winning battles in rooms full of men with billion-dollar egos. But he had never met anyone as quietly strong as the woman now scraping by in a grease-stained polo shirt and black apron. She didn't need charity. She needed a door, a path. And he, of all people, had the means to build it. He swiveled in his chair and picked up his phone. "Linda," he said to his executive assistant, "get the director of the Carter Foundation on the line. We're starting a new creative initiative. I want to launch a nationwide search for an artistic lead." A pause, then a flicker of a smile touched his lips. "Except I already know who I'm hiring." Jackson Carter had never built something so quickly in his life. Within 48 hours, the Carter Foundation had a new program. On paper, human touch art meets innovation. It was designed to merge creative vision with the nonprofit's tech outreach efforts, bringing warmth and humanity to an organization that had long been accused of feeling too cold, too corporate. But the program was just a container. The real focus was Emily. Jackson worked with precision, constructing every detail to protect her pride. This couldn't feel like pity. It had to feel earned, real, inevitable. He ordered his team to comb the internet for her old work, anything archived from her CalArts days. And what they found was gold, a forgotten digital gallery, dusty and unvisited for over a decade, filled with concept sketches, storyboards, and haunting charcoal portraits. Jackson selected the most powerful pieces, an abstract series on grief titled The Quiet Wait, and a surreal cityscape collection called When We Sleep. He had his legal team write a job offer that made it seem as if a talent scout at the foundation had stumbled upon her work online. The offers: lead concept designer for the foundation's new initiative, $150,000 annual salary, full family health coverage, signing bonus, relocation assistance, and most importantly, total creative freedom. Still, he hesitated before delivering it. For all his planning, Jackson knew there was one thing he couldn't control: Emily herself. She wouldn't make this easy. She was too proud, too principled, and he loved that about her. That evening, just before the dinner rush, he returned to June's grill. This time, no ball cap, no anonymity, just Jackson Carter, standing tall in a rain-specked coat briefcase in hand, heart in his throat. He stepped inside. The bell jingled overhead. Emily was behind the counter, wiping it down with tired precision. "Find a seat anywhere," she called, without looking up. "I was hoping to speak with you specifically, Ms. Walker." Her hand froze mid-wipe. Slowly she turned. Their eyes met. Recognition bloomed on her face. First surprise, then disbelief. And finally a flicker of something raw embarrassment. "Jackson," she whispered. "What are you doing here?" He offered a cautious smile. "It's been a while." She swallowed hard. "Yeah, about 17 years and a few $1 billion from what I hear." He laughed gently. "I guess I've been busy." Emily crossed her arms, suddenly guarded. "If this is about that tip you left last week, look, I appreciate it, but it was way too much. You didn't have to." "It's not about the tip," he said, cutting her off. "Though you earned every cent of that and more." She stared at him. "May I sit?" he asked. She glanced around the half-empty diner, sighed, then nodded toward a corner booth. 5 minutes. "I'm on the clock." They sat across from each other. Her arms remained crossed. Her guard stayed up. "I'm here on business." He began pulling the offer folder from his briefcase. Her eyes narrowed. "The Carter Foundation is launching a new project. It needs a heart, a vision, your work." It resurfaced online, and the moment I saw it again, I knew. It's exactly what we need. He slid the folder toward her. She didn't open it. Instead, she stared at him like he'd just offered her a moon rock. "You're kidding." "I'm not. This is a pity job." She said the word sharp, defensive. "You feel bad, so you're throwing me a bone." "No," his voice lowered. "This is not charity. This is me recognizing someone I respect. Someone who has more talent in her pinky than most designers I've ever hired." Emily's jaw tightened. "Why me?" "Because Jackson said, locking eyes with her, you've always been the one person who could take something complicated and make it human." She blinked, looked down at the folder, hesitated, but she didn't push it away. And for now, that was enough. Emily didn't sleep that night. The job offer folder lay open on her kitchen table, its polished cover and heavy stock paper completely out of place in her tiny one-bedroom apartment. Next to it sat her chipped coffee mug, a plate of untouched toast, and a sketchbook she hadn't dared to open in years. $150,000. That number alone made her dizzy. And not just the money, the benefits, the title, the creative control. It wasn't just a job. It was a lifeline disguised as a miracle. But she didn't believe in miracles. She stared at her reflection in the dark window, pale, tired, uncertain. The The woman in the glass didn't look like a lead concept designer. She looked like someone who cleaned grease traps and ironed shirts for a living. Someone who'd stopped dreaming a long time ago. By morning, she made her decision. She was going to turn it down. Not because she didn't want it, but because it felt fake, impossible, too convenient. That evening, Jackson returned. He met her outside the diner during her 15-minute break under the buzzing light of a half-broken street lamp. She stood with her arms crossed back against the brick wall, trying to look composed. "I can't take it," she said, before he even opened his mouth. Jackson tilted his head. "Why not?" She shrugged. "It's too much, too fast. And let's be honest, you're doing this out of guilt." His expression didn't flinch. Emily continued, voice rising. "I've been invisible for 15 years, and suddenly you walk in, toss me a 6-figure role like it's a tip. I don't need your charity, Jackson." He stepped closer, his tone calm but firm. "It's not charity, and I didn't do this because I feel bad." Then why she snapped. Jackson paused. Then he said, "Because I owe you." She blinked. "What?" "The Harrison Merit Scholarship," he replied. "Senior year, remember?" Emily's face hardened. "Of course I remember. We were the finalists. You won." He nodded slowly. "Yeah. And I never told anyone, but I didn't win because I was smarter. I won because I wrote the most desperate essay of my life." Emily's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "My dad's construction firm went under that year. We were about to lose our house. That scholarship was my only shot. I poured my entire panic and fear into that application. It wasn't better than yours. It was just more urgent." Emily's face softened slightly. He took a breath, voice low. "I knew you deserved it. And when I heard your name wasn't called, I looked for you in the crowd. You were clapping, smiling. But your eyes told the truth." She looked down, swallowing hard. "I've carried that guilt for 17 years, he continued. "And when I saw you in that diner, I realized I had a chance to make it right. Not by handing you money, but by finally recognizing what should have been yours all along." Emily's breath hitched. This job, this opportunity, it's not a favor. It's the correction of a mistake. Silence stretched between them, heavy and full of memory. Finally, she looked up, her voice quiet. "You really believe I'm still that person?" "I know you are," he said. "You just forgot for a while. Let me help you remember." She stared at him, eyes glistening, expression torn between resistance and yearning. Then she gave the smallest nod. "Okay," she whispered. And for the first time in years, Jackson saw her smile, not from politeness, but from something real. Hope. 3 weeks later, Emily Walker stepped into the Carter Foundation's headquarters in downtown Seattle. 22 stories of glass steel and silence. She wore the only blazer she owned, a Navy thrift store find that she'd pressed 3 times before leaving home. Her palms were sweating. Her heart wouldn't slow down. The building's interior was sleek, modern, clinical, white walls, touchscreen directories, hushed footsteps on polished concrete. She felt like an intruder in a temple built for people who didn't sweat over electricity bills or bargain racks. Then a voice greeted her. "Miss Walker, welcome to the Carter Foundation. Mr. Carter is expecting you. Dr. Patel will meet you upstairs." A poised woman with an earpiece and an iPad led her to the elevator. Emily's ears popped as they ascended to the 19th floor. When the doors opened, everything changed. The Foundation's workspace wasn't cold or sterile. It was alive. Natural light flooded in through massive windows. Wooden beams curved across the ceiling like ribs of a great ship. Potted plants spilled out of corners. An entire wall bore no paint, only a massive blank canvas titled, "Your Story Starts Here." Dr. Asha Patel, the Foundation's director, greeted her with a warm, genuine smile. "There's no interview," she said. "Jackson told me everything I need to know." Emily blinked. "He did." Dr. Patel laughed softly. "Don't worry. He didn't talk you up too much. Just said you were going to change how people feel about what we do." She gave Emily a tour open workspace's cozy corners for brainstorming collaborative zones with writable glass walls. The entire floor was designed for creativity, and it felt nothing like the diner or the dry cleaner or the life Emily had known for the last 15 years. Dr. Patel led her to a small office with 2 windows, a standing desk, and shelves waiting to be filled. "This is yours," she said. "Jackson said you'd want a view." Emily stepped forward slowly, breath catching in her throat. The view looked out over Puget Sound. The water shimmered like glass under a pale spring sun. "This is real?" she asked under her breath. Dr. Patel nodded. "It's yours. All of it." The days that followed were a blur. Emily poured herself into the job with a hunger she didn't know she still had. She dug up old sketchbooks, revived abandoned ideas, sketched on napkins during lunch. Her hands, once rough from dish soap and dry cleaning fluid, were soon covered in ink and charcoal. She designed a new logo for the foundation to Interwoven Hands. One digital, one human, forming the shape of a flame. It was bold, vulnerable, symbolic. Jackson had stood silent for nearly a full minute when he first saw it. "You still have it," he said, voice husky with awe. Their interactions became more frequent. Lunch meetings turned into late-night brainstorms. Studio critiques melted into quiet moments where they simply talked. He told her about the loneliness of leadership, the price of success. She told him about the night her father almost didn't make it, about sleeping on a hospital floor with her sketchbook clutched to her chest, afraid she'd forget who she was. They didn't label what was growing between them, but it was there, in the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room, in the way she laughed now, full and unafraid. One Friday afternoon, she received her first paycheck. She stared at the numbers, stunned. The first thing she did was call the nurse agency and hire full-time care for her father. The second, she moved her family into a clean, sunlit condo with a view of Green Lake. And that night, as she stood on the balcony, sketchbook in hand and the city glowing beneath her, Emily whispered, "I remember who I am now." Spring faded into early summer, and with it came an unexpected warmth in Emily's life. Her days were now filled with color, purpose, and the quiet thrill of rediscovery. Her art once again had a home, on walls in meetings, and in the hearts of people who finally understood its worth. She was no longer just surviving. She was living. So, when an email arrived one morning with the subject line, "Exhibition Opportunity, Vanguard Contemporary NYC," it felt like the universe was finally aligning. Emily blinked at the message, not sure if she was imagining it. The email was from a man named Sebastian Doran, an art curator for what he described as an emerging elite gallery based in New York. He explained that one of their anonymous scouts had come across her RISD-era portfolio. They were deeply moved, so moved in fact that they wanted to offer her a solo show. A solo show in New York. It was the kind of email she used to dream about back in college when she'd scribble gallery names in the margins of her notebooks. It was the kind of opportunity she had buried under years of responsibility and resignation. Still, it seemed too perfect. She decided to mention it casually over coffee with Jackson. "It's probably nothing," she said, forcing a light tone. "Just an email. Could be spam, right?" Jackson looked up from his mug. "Vanguard? I've heard of them. They're new but legit, at least on the surface. Want our legal team to take a look." She shook her head quickly. "No, I mean, not yet. I don't even know if I'm going to answer." He smiled, and his words made her heart squeeze. "Emily, this is exactly what you deserve. Say yes." So she did. She replied to Sebastian. Within hours he called. His voice was warm, energetic, full of flattery. He raved about her emotional depth, structural nuance, and radical restraint. He spoke like he'd studied her work for years, and Emily, starved for artistic validation, couldn't help but feel exhilarated. They exchanged emails for days. He asked thoughtful questions about her creative process. He offered to fly her out for the exhibit's debut. And then, a week later, came the next step. "To finalize our promotional materials," Sebastian wrote, "our design team needs your complete high-resolution portfolio. That includes your RISD work and anything more recent you're comfortable sharing. We want to highlight your full artistic arc. Please use our secure upload server, encrypted end-to-end. Just click the link below." Emily hesitated, only for a moment. After all, she worked for a tech foundation now. She'd heard the term encrypted dozens of times in meetings. The portal looked clean-branded, professional, and Jackson had said she deserved this. So, late that evening in her office at the foundation, after everyone had gone home, Emily selected her best pieces and uploaded them, her old sketches, her newest concepts, even a few mock-ups from the foundation's upcoming campaign. The upload took nearly an hour. When it finished, she closed the tab, shut down her laptop, and leaned back in her chair. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine it. Her art hanging in a Manhattan gallery. Strangers whispering admiration, her name on a plaque beneath a painting. A future that once seemed dead now felt one step closer. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that in the moment she clicked submit, something else had been silently activated. A hidden script embedded in that upload link had wormed its way into her computer. And from there, it began crawling through the Foundation's secure network, exploiting her high-level access. It didn't just want her art, it wanted everything. And by the time Emily went home, humming a quiet tune with hope in her chest, the breach had already begun. The breach was detected at 2:43 a.m., not by a person, but by an automated security daemon Jackson had personally commissioned during the early days of the Carter Foundation's expansion. It flagged an anomaly in the network, a massive data extraction routed through a supposedly secure connection, originating from a trusted internal source. The system traced it with chilling precision. Source: device ID CW48 Emily. Location: 19th floor, Foundation Design Studio. User: Emily Walker. Target: CNS compression algorithm files classified as proprietary core code. When the alert reached Jackson's phone, he was asleep, alone in his penthouse. He jolted awake, stared at the screen, and felt his blood run cold. Within minutes, he was fully dressed and racing through the empty streets of Seattle. By 3:15 a.m., he stood in the darkened cybersecurity command center at CNS HQ. The room glowed with ghostly blue monitors, each pulsing with data and threat logs. His head of security, Marcus Lang, laid it out in brutal detail. The source code was accessed remotely. The signature trails back to Emily Walker's workstation. It was uploaded to an untraceable offshore server. Based on the timestamps and data patterns, it's an inside job. Jackson didn't speak. He couldn't. His stomach twisted. The voice of reason screamed in his head. It's her. It has to be. Look at the evidence. But something deeper, something stubborn in his gut whispered, "No, not her. She wouldn't," he said aloud. Lang didn't blink. "I want to believe that too, sir. But the logs are airtight." Jackson turned to the wall screen. There it was, a full activity log showing the breach flowing from Emily's credentials, her device, her location. She was the only one who had access. Lang continued grim-faced. "If this goes public, the board will demand termination legal action and will be forced to report to the feds. Standard protocol for intellectual property theft at this scale." "Not yet," Jackson said firmly. Lang arched an eyebrow. "Sir, I need 24 hours. Lock everything down, no escalation, no notification to the board. This stays in-house under my authority." Lang paused, then nodded. "Understood." Jackson left the building without speaking another word. He didn't take his car. Instead, he retrieved a matte black Ducati from the executive garage. He needed the roar of the engine to cut through the growing static in his mind. By 4 a.m., he was at Emily's condo. The lights were on. Inside, laughter floated out. Her brother Ben, her father music, playing softly in the background. A celebration. Jackson knocked once. Emily opened the door with a radiant smile. "Jackson." "You won't believe it," she said, eyes shining. "The gallery just sent over the exhibit contract. They want to fly me out next month. It's really happening." He didn't return the smile. "Emily," he said flatly, "we need to talk. Alone." Her expression faltered. "What? Why?" "Please!" They stepped out onto the balcony. The night air was cool, but Jackson's voice was colder. "At 9:17 last night, he said your computer transmitted over 700 megabytes of proprietary code to an offshore server. My company's core IP was breached, and the security logs say you did it." Emily froze. I don't understand," she stammered. "The upload was routed through a fake gallery server. The link you clicked," he paused, watching her face go pale, "was a Trojan horse." "No," she whispered. "That can't be right. It was secure. They said..." "Did anything seem strange?" She shook her head wildly. It all felt real. The emails, the website, the curator, Sebastian. He talked to me. He knew my work. Jackson's chest ached at the sight of her. This wasn't the face of a traitor. This was someone who had just watched their dream turn into a nightmare. Emily, he said softly but urgently, we need to figure this out, now. Anything you remember? Anything odd? She hesitated. Ben, my brother? He looked at the upload link before I sent it. He said something. Hold on. She disappeared inside, returning moments later with Ben in tow, barefoot confused. Ben, she said, what did you say about that gallery link? He rubbed his eyes. Just that it used a weird port protocol. Looked secure, but it was masking its actual route. I figured it was just some gallery tech quirk. Jackson inhaled sharply. That was it. The flaw in the frame job. He locked eyes with Emily, his voice now steel. Pack a bag, stay here, lock the doors, don't talk to anyone. He turned to Ben. You're coming with me. Wait, what's happening? Ben asked, stunned. Jackson was already moving. We're going to war. Jackson's office became a war room. By dawn, Ben and Quinn Mercer, the private investigator, were gathered around a long conference table littered with coffee cups, code printouts, and network forensics. The skyline outside was turning pink, but inside the tension was leaden and unshifting. Ben sat hunched over a laptop, eyes flicking across lines of recovered code. The Trojan that had infected Emily's computer was good, frighteningly good. It masked itself as a gallery server, mimicked secure encryption, and deleted its own traces after executing the breach. But it hadn't been perfect. There, Ben pointed, a single line of residual code. Whoever wrote this left behind a call tag, a digital signature. Quinn leaned in, recognizing it instantly. Nix, she muttered. A cyber mercenary group for hire, mostly used by corporate players who want dirty work done clean. Ben looked up. They're not freelance. Someone paid them. Jackson's jaw tensed. I know who. He walked to the whiteboard and wrote one name in bold all caps. Gavin Stryker, CEO of Nexitech Systems, Jackson's oldest rival. They'd both launched data compression startups out of garages within a year of each other. But where Jackson had built his empire on integrity and innovation, Gavin played a different game, one of manipulation, espionage, and brute acquisition. Stryker had spent years trying to get his hands on CNS's compression algorithm, the same one Emily's credentials had appeared to leak. He knew I wouldn't suspect her, Jackson said, pacing. He counted on it. She was the perfect vulnerability. Ben closed the laptop with a thud. So, what now? Jackson's eyes glinted. Now we turn the weapon back on him. The plan was risky, illegal if done wrong, but brilliant if executed precisely. They created a honeypot, a fake data file labeled CNS Ethos Compression V3 Euro Decryption Key. They planted it inside a virtual sandbox, then allowed a synthetic trail to be leaked through a dummy account they knew Stryker's team monitored. The bait was too good to resist. 3 hours later, the file was accessed. Not by a proxy, not by a junior hacker, but from Stryker's own device using an administrative credential inside Nexitech's internal network. That was all they needed. Simultaneously, two things happened. A logic bomb embedded in the honeypot detonated scrambling Nexitech's internal R&D servers, corrupting years of research data beyond recovery. A silent alarm was triggered to the FBI's cybercrime division, who had long suspected Stryker's corporate dealings, but lacked evidence until now. By 8:45 a.m., federal agents were in Nexitech's lobby. By 9:15, Gavin Stryker was in handcuffs. Back at CNS headquarters, the boardroom erupted. Jackson stood at the head of the table as his executive team stared at a looping news broadcast, showing Stryker being led out of his building in disgrace. He took a breath. Effective immediately, he said, Emily Walker is cleared of all suspicion. She was framed by a third party targeting this company through her, and she fought harder than anyone to prove her innocence, even when the world pointed fingers. There were murmurs, then nods, and then applause. But Jackson wasn't interested in vindication. He left the meeting early. He had somewhere else to be. He arrived at Emily's condo just past 10 a.m. She opened the door, anxiety written all over her face. Did it work? She asked. Jackson didn't speak. He simply pulled out his phone and showed her the headline. Nexitech CEO arrested in corporate espionage scandal. Emily stared, eyes wide, mouth parted. I told you I'd handle it, Jackson said gently. She looked at him like he was a miracle and a mystery wrapped into one. Then, without a word, She threw her arms around him and sobbed into his chest. Relief, gratitude, trust. And something else too, something neither of them could name yet, but both could feel. 3 months later, the Carter Foundation unveiled its transformation. What had once been a sterile extension of a tech empire now pulsed with warmth, humanity, and vision. Its grand rebranding event drew media donors, tech leaders, and artists from across the country. But the true centerpiece stood not in the crowd, but behind a large velvet curtain center stage. As the room fell silent, the curtain rose. Gasps rippled across the audience. It was a painting, massive, vibrant, impossible to ignore. A swirling mass of dark indigo, storm gray, and fractured glass tones spiraled into the center. But from that chaos emerged strands of gold, soft lavender, and crimson light, weaving into a hand reaching out, almost beckoning the viewer to step closer. The painting's title was etched below in bronze, "The Ghost in the Machine," by Emily Walker. She stood off to the side of the stage, her palms slick, heart pounding. But as the applause began, genuine, loud, lasting, something in her released. A weight she hadn't realized she was still carrying slid off her shoulders. Behind her, Jackson stepped up to the podium. Dressed sharply in slate gray with no tie, he looked every bit the executive, yet somehow softer now, warmer. He cleared his throat. When we began this rebrand, he said, we wanted to reconnect with the human side of innovation. But what we didn't realize is that we were missing heart. He turned, looking directly at Emily. This woman brought it back. There was a pause, a few camera flashes. But Jackson wasn't speaking to the room anymore. He was speaking to her. Emily Walker reminded us that people don't connect with data. They connect with stories, with struggle, with resilience, and sometimes, when we're lucky, with redemption. The audience erupted in applause again. Afterward, as the crowd mingled and wine glasses clinked, Emily found herself standing next to Jackson by the enormous window overlooking Puget Sound. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Jackson said quietly, "You changed everything." She looked up at him. "You believed in me when all the data said I was guilty." He smiled gently. "I chose to believe you." She reached for his hand, and for the first time since that rainy night at June's Grill, they weren't the billionaire and the waitress. They weren't the CEO and the accused. They were Jackson and Emily, two people who had walked through fire and come out the other side not burned, but forged. Some stories don't begin with a fairy tale. They start in a rain-soaked diner with tired eyes, forgotten dreams, and a ghost from the past sipping coffee in the shadows. Emily Walker wasn't rescued. She wasn't saved. She was seen by someone who remembered who she was before the world tried to erase her, by someone who had the power to open a door, but the wisdom not to force her through it, and Jackson Carter. He wasn't the knight in shining armor. He was a man who once made a mistake and decided when given the chance to make it right. Their journey wasn't built on romance alone. It was built on mutual respect, on second chances, on truth spoken at the hardest possible moments, on a willingness to fight for someone, not because they needed saving, but because they deserved everything they had lost. Emily's story reminds us that sacrifice doesn't erase potential, that buried dreams are not dead, they're dormant, and that when someone truly believes in us, it can awaken a fire we forgot we carried. And Jackson's story reminds us that power isn't about how many people you command. It's about how many lives you choose to lift. So, if you ever find yourself sitting in a quiet corner, looking at someone who seems invisible to the world, ask yourself, what story brought them here? And what story might begin if someone dared to believe in them again? Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can offer is a second look and a second chance. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, give it a like, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one.